Hi all. I feel the need to make another video here. I've been getting a lot of comments by trans people trying to tell me that I wasn't really trans, trying to invalidate my experience. And I know why. I did the same thing. When I was living as a trans woman and I saw someone detransition, I used to say, well, they weren't really trans. If you could detransition, that means you weren't really trans to begin with. You were just confused, and now you came back to living as your biological sex because that was what was right for you all along. You weren't really trans. You know why I used to do that? Why I would discredit detransitioners and claim they weren't really trans? Because for them to detransition would cause me to question myself, would cause me to question what I was doing, that I was a man wearing a dress in public, and I'd have to look at myself and I'd say, well, damn, if that person went back to living as their biological sex, what's that say about me? And that's what's happening to a lot of trans people right now, is more of us detransitioners are coming out of the woodwork. We're coming out into the light, and we're causing those who are living as trans people now to question themselves, to have to say, well, damn, if all these people are detransitioning, what's that say about me? And the result is they have to find some way to justify their identity, to say, I'm real, you weren't real to begin with, and that's why you're where you're at, and that's why I'm where I'm at right now. When the reality is, if you're still living as trans and still identifying that, there's a reason for that, because your beliefs still surround that idea, that lifestyle, that way of being. It doesn't mean that you're any more trans than I was, other than to say if you stay being trans. See, and that's the difference where like Buck Angel, it makes the clarification that a real trans person is someone who recognizes their biological sex but continues to choose to live as the opposite sex, not genuinely believing they are the opposite sex. And that's what I wanted to talk about here, because a lot of people are trying to tell me that because I wasn't femme and things, that I wasn't really trans. So I wanted to talk a little bit more to you guys about what I actually went through. Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is LaRell, and I'm a former trans woman. I transitioned in the year 2017 and had gender confirmation surgery in 2019. I lived 6 years as a woman before having a sudden awakening to the realities of gender identity and what causes a person's gender identity to form. When I realized this, I questioned everything about myself, and I changed my whole life to return to living back as the man I was born as. And for the first time in my 43 years of life, I love myself as a man, and it's amazing. And I feel so happy and confident in life in a way that I never could, especially not when I was defying my own biology and trying to live life as a woman. So I welcome you to this channel where I will discuss trans issues and detrans issues. Thank you for watching. You cannot possibly convey every detail, every aspect of a person's psyche on a YouTube video. I make these YouTube videos to try to convey my experience, to try to share what my experience was, and I can only say so much. The human language is limited, and videos are limited in time, and you can't possibly say absolutely everything. I mean, I have a book that I wrote that's 472 pages long that talks about my experience, and people won't read the book but want to listen to a couple videos and draw conclusions as to what my whole story is based on a few things said in a video. Or you guys love to judge my marriage, judge my wife for staying with me based on the little video we put up and the small amount of information we could possibly convey in that video. We've been together for 9 years. We couldn't possibly tell you guys in these videos everything we've been through. That's just not possible. So it's fascinating to me, the people that find the need to comment on a YouTube video based on the little information they have available to them and draw conclusions as if that's the whole story. So again, I want to talk about my experience with gender dysphoria. Okay, so starting at about 4 years old, like most trans people, that's about the standard age when you become aware of the difference between male and female. There's a reason that most trans people realize at that age, about 4 years old, that they're trans, and I'm no exception. It was at 4 years old about that I started feeling genuinely like my brain was female, but my body was male. Now, you can look back on my life and all the manly things I did, and you can say, well, clearly you weren't femme. Like some trans people, they start very young expressing themselves very femme-like, like as if their brain really is female. Whereas for me, the environment I grew up in, everybody is a unique fingerprint. Every single one of us behaves exactly based upon the environment we grew up in. We develop an identity, a personality based on every experience we've ever had. And as we're growing up as a child, the environment we're in and the experiences we have, the relationship we have to our experiences, our parents, the way our parents raise us, and the things we are exposed to on TV and movies and things, our little child mind develops an identity based on everything we perceive, everything we experience, and the interpretation we give to everything we experience and the relationship that we have with it. And as I was growing up as a child, I realized the difference between boys and girls, and I felt like I belonged in the girl crowd. Okay? I lived with this my entire life, this feeling that I somehow was a girl on the inside and a boy on the outside. And let me tell you, that is not a fun thing to live with. And I don't think anybody that has, if you have never experienced what that feels like, the horror, the absolute horror of such a thing, to feel like you are in the wrong body, it is the weirdest, craziest thing. And it is why people do such extreme things as have surgery to correct it, because it literally feels like there is no other option but to align your body with how you feel inside, because it feels so real. People who don't understand like to say, well, you were just traumatized and you were just trying to cope with your trauma. Well, yeah, that's exactly what being trans is. Trans is not something that you're just born with. It is a product of your experiences, it's a product of your traumas. And even those trans people who try to tell me that I'm different than they are, that I was traumatized but they weren't, no, the fact that you're trans means you are traumatized. It means you're forgetting the traumas you experienced. You experienced complex trauma as you were growing up that programmed into you an identity that differs from your biology. There are only two genders, male and female. There are intersex conditions, but as far as genders and sex goes, there are only two. It is black and white, male or female. It is clear as day. That is how biology works. That is how it has always worked. That is how it always will work. We have some weird mutations in human beings sometimes, but the fact is, male and female is what it is. And I confused that. For a long time, my mind, my poor little child mind was trying to tell me that I was a girl. You belong with the girls. You should be going to church with the girls. You should be wearing a dress like all these girls are, because that's what felt right. That is gender dysphoria. When you stand there and you look down at your own body and you hate it and you feel like it is not right, that it's the wrong body, these are the wrong parts, this doesn't feel right, I can't even align with this, I can't even feel right in my own body. Had to change cameras. My other one ran out of memory. It was my phone. So, growing up with gender dysphoria is not, I used to feel crazy, like literally crazy. Those who don't understand what it's like can try to pass judgment, you can try to understand what it was like, but until you've actually experienced what that really feels like, to feel like you are in the wrong body, you cannot possibly ever speak to such a thing or try to tell me what was really going on for me. I know it seems weird, like how could you possibly just go back to living as a man after all of that if it was real? Same way someone can grow up in the Mormon church their entire life and think it's completely real and then all of a sudden have it all fall out from under them. That's delusion. It happens to human beings all the time. Our human psyches are subject to grasp onto things for answers. We get confused. We fall under confusion for a long time. We might join a club and we think it's great for a while, and then after a while we realize, wait, the things they teach here and believe are not something that aligns with me. But while you're in it, you're blind to it. My entire life, if you read my big fat book about my experience, you might have a better glimpse into what my experience was like. And like I said, in these videos, I sit here and I try to talk and I try to tell you everything that I experienced in a way that you can hear and understand. But like I said, human language is limited. And then the ability for the listener to fully hear and interpret what the presenter is saying is limited as well. I could convey everything perfectly fine, and there are many of you who would still confuse it or not hear what I'm saying. And that's just part of being a human, and that's something I have to accept when I make these videos, that they're going to be misinterpreted, they're going to be heard wrong. People are going to try to project their own experience onto me in the same way that I, as a human, tend to project my experience on other human beings. I have a tendency to make generalized statements about being trans. And this is not because I'm saying that everybody's experience is like mine. My experience is my own. We as human beings are very unique fingerprints. Our personalities are developed from a very, very specific sequence of events and experiences and interpretations of those experiences that forms us to be who we think we are. We are not actually who we think we are. We are a program, a walking program. Every single one of us is a walking program, programmed from our life experiences. When we come to a fork in the road, we are making decisions based on every experience we've had in the past up to that point, together with all available information that we have in front of us when we arrive at that fork in the road. A decision to have gender reassignment surgery, for example. I made that decision because I was where I was at, because every bit of information I had available to me at that point, together with this lifelong gender dysphoria I lived with, caused me to make that decision. It's where we're at. It's what happened. I can't judge myself for it because I did what I did based on everything I knew at the time. That just made me think about the commenters who tell me I still have a lot of self-hatred, or that I'm still confused, or that question whether if you were delusional then, how do you know you're not in a delusion now? You actually never can know. We're all constantly in a delusion of some sort or another. Every single one of us. Including those of you who think you're not in a delusion, who think you know who you are and you're living your life for yourself, making your own decisions. You're not. You're making those decisions based on your past, based on every relationship you have to every experience you've ever had, and the stories you told yourself that they mean, and the stories you still tell yourself that they mean. You, to this day, behave in certain situations because of a thing that happened to you 20 years ago. That's what humans are. And I see a lot of people commenting who don't get that concept, who do not understand that as a human being, you are an intricate tapestry that has been woven from every experience you've ever had. And as such, you have to realize that we are all under a delusion of one sort or another. Every single one of us, because of our past experiences. In every moment, every fork in the road, you're standing there just as clueless as anybody else is. You may be educated, you may have gone to college and got some college degree. This gives you access to a certain level of knowledge, but still not common sense and experience. Life experience is key. Life experience gives people something that nothing else can. You can read every book in the world, but until you actually experience yourself what those books talk about, you will not fully understand. You can learn, you can understand knowledge, but until you experience yourself, you cannot fully understand. And so those who have never experienced what gender dysphoria is, what it honestly feels like to be in the wrong body. Right now we have all this discussion about rapid onset gender dysphoria and social contagion, and people like to assume that I was a victim of that. I didn't even know what transgender was. I was not exposed to this stuff. When I made this decision to transition, it was because I finally became aware of the possibility, that it was a possibility. But for most of my life I lived with this desire to make my body be female. Every single night, I would pray to God with tears in my eyes to please either take this affliction from me, make me no longer suffer with this feeling that I'm in the wrong body, or allow me to wake up in the right body. Please, please God, please. Every single night I would lay there in bed and I would pray, please let me wake up in the right body, or take this away from me. Either or, one or the other. And neither happened. I had to suffer with that feeling that I was in the wrong body for 38 years. I can't even remember when I actually transitioned. 2017, so I would have been 36. I turned 37 that year. So, like I said, I was not a product of this whole social contagion thing. And so those who want to try to align my story with what kids are being exposed to now, the reason I'm telling my story is because I recognize the danger to our kids now. The danger of being exposed to this concept. Someone like myself grew up in a world where I wasn't exposed to it. I just had to live with this absolute despair of feeling like I was in the wrong body. And you might say, and now we have affirming medical care so that kids don't have to live with that horror that you had to grow up with. The only reason I grew up with that horror of feeling like I was in the wrong body was because of trauma, because of my experiences. That is the only reason any trans person grows up with a feeling that they can't be in their own body. The only reason any trans person grows up feeling unsafe in their own body, or like they should be in a different body, is because of trauma. Experiences that were experienced in your formative years, yes, even before you were 4 years old, that caused you by the time you were about 4 years old to develop the belief that you were in the wrong body. It doesn't biologically align to have it be anything else. It is in the mind. It is a belief, something that is developed through your childhood. And you can try to claim that I'm not really trans all you want to, or that, well, I'm not now. The definition, let's talk about the definition of transgender. The definition of transgender, I don't even know what the actual word for word definition is right now, but I suppose I could look it up. In fact, let's do that. I have my phone on me. I want to see what the definition is so we can talk about that and whether that aligns with me or not. Okay, definition of transgender. Let's see what this says. Transgender is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity, expression, or behavior differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. If that doesn't fit me, I don't know what does. Transgender people may experience their identity in a variety of ways, such as feeling like they don't fit in with people of their assigned sex, or having a strong desire to be something other than that sex. That is the exact definition of what I grew up with. In the Mormon church, it's very gender secluded. The men go to one meeting, the women go to another meeting. My entire life I felt so wrong being in with the men. Like, this isn't where I belong. I belong with the women. That aligns with who I am. When I was a kid, watching my sister have slumber parties with her girlfriends, that's where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be a boy. I didn't want anything to do with that. I didn't feel like it even was me. And that's the hard thing to convey to people that have never experienced what that feels like. I mean, it used to confuse the hell out of me. It's one of the reasons I became so fascinated and intrigued by human psychology and understanding why the mind works the way it does, because I wanted to understand what was going on with me. What is this thing I'm experiencing? How is it possible that I'm in one body, but I feel legitimately like my identity, like my soul, is a different sex? It is the most confusing, crazy thing to live with. And it was something that I was convinced I would live with for the rest of my life. I mean, I spent so many years praying for it to be taken away. I tried Jesus, I tried God. And that's another thing. I want you all to know I have my own personal relationship with God and Jesus now. My belief in God and Jesus completely went out the window when I left the Mormon church, because the church is fed to you in such a specific, curated way that you grow up believing that it is the only church on the entire face of the planet that is true. And therefore, when it dissolves and when it's no longer true to you, you cannot place your faith in anything else. All of a sudden, all belief in any kind of God, Savior, anything just poof, goes right out the window when your belief in the Mormon church disintegrates. This happens to a lot of people. There are many ex-Mormon atheist Facebook groups and things because it happens to a lot of us. But then, after a while, you realize that atheism is a lonely, scary place. That doesn't feel good. It feels good to recognize your position as a human being and that there is something greater than yourself. As long as we're walking around on this big planet with these big heads and big egos thinking that we're all that and that we know everything and we know everything about why we're here and where we're going, that's ego. And if we're coming from ego, we're coming from thoughts. We're coming from our mind. We're not in our heart. Your heart will tell you the truth. Your heart will guide you. Your mind will lead you astray. You know why? Because your mind has floating around in it every experience you've ever had prior to this point. And so when you go to make a decision with your mind, you're making it based on everything you've ever experienced. And part of you might say, well, yeah, that makes me make a good decision because I'm making a decision based on all available information. Well, it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to know that not every person knows everything. Even someone with 2 PhDs does not know things that require experience. You can get as many PhDs as you want. You are never going to fully understand what it's like to feel like you are in the wrong body. You can hear people's stories. You can try to build in your mind, in your psyche, this understanding of what a trans person experiences, what it's like to be in the wrong body and what that feels like. Constant reminders every day, all day, everywhere you go, walking through the walking through Target by the women's section, and you're reminded again, those are the clothes I wish I could wear, but I'm in the wrong body. Going to the bathroom, having to go in the men's bathroom when that doesn't feel like it aligns with you. Constant reminders all day, every single day, of this gender binary that exists in the world and that you don't fit in with it. It is a nightmare to live with, and which is why I have a huge level of empathy and compassion for trans people and what they're dealing with, because I was there. And I know what that's like, to live in this world that expects you to conform to one binary or the other, and when you honestly feel like you don't, and you cannot fit in with one or the other, like non-binary individuals who are like, well shit, I don't want to be a man or a woman, I'm gonna fall somewhere in between because I'm just a human. Well, yes, you are just a human, but the fact is you were still born biologically either male or female. And to think that you can defy that, I mean, of course you can. We're human beings. You can express yourself any way you can. But again, the fact is, biology rules. Biology says there is male or female. Anything else is in the mind. Any other gender identity is made up in the mind. It's not real. It's not biologically sound. It is something that you made up in your mind based on experiences that made you think that was real. It doesn't make it not real. Like I just explained in myself, it was very real. Very, very real to feel like you are in the wrong body. And nobody can understand that unless they've experienced it themselves. And the fascinating thing is those who are experiencing it themselves now, but have not come full circle like I did to return to living as their biological sex, it still feels real. And you will want to tell me till the day you die that I wasn't really trans in order to make yourself feel better about your position. Those who are currently living as trans, of course, they have to feel like they're doing the right thing for themselves, and so they will defend themselves and justify it, like I did. It's just what humans do. When there's a behavior that we want to do, and others are trying to tell us that it's wrong, we have to fight for that. We have to argue for why it is real and why I should be recognized and affirmed in this identity. Because of the fact that there are clearly two biological genders, male or female, or intersex, and things, because that is the fact, because it is a binary, because it is black and white, male or female, anything else, like I said, is a belief. It's a belief that was developed in childhood experience. It doesn't make it less of a belief. It's still very much a belief. Such a real belief that someone like myself would even make permanent changes to our body, thinking that it was something that was going to be for the rest of my life. And so I get it. I get what it's like to be in that place, to feel, to be in one body, but to honestly feel like it's the wrong body for your mind, your soul, your internal thoughts and feelings don't align with your body. I know what that's like. For my entire life, I struggled with that. And now, I just happened to be able to see enough of the picture, enough of the puzzle pieces came together that I was able to see the whole picture and see what happened to me and see why I'm where I'm at. There's another YouTuber called Call Me Sam that I recently came across, another detransitioner. This person lived for 20-something years as a woman and has had the same realizations that I had. Very much trans. I don't think anybody would listen to Call Me Sam's story and say, well, you weren't really trans. If you were really trans, you'd still be trans now. If you listen to Sam talk about their experience, it's very similar to mine. Just growing up, although And that has always confused me. The fact that some trans people start out being really femme, expressing themselves really femme, dressing girly right from the start. I would have had I felt safe to, because that was what aligned with me. It was a constant struggle to every day feel like I didn't get to dress those ways or express myself in those ways. But my particular environment was one that I was programmed to believe that I couldn't, that it was something I had to crush at all costs, could not let that be known about me, or I would suffer serious consequences. I had a reason to keep it quiet, to crush it. I had to. The kids who grow up expressing themselves in a more feminine nature, something different happened to them. Their experience was different, to where they grew up feeling safe to dress in female clothes. Their parents, like Jazz Jennings' parents, just made it available, opened that path for them, and that's why they did that. I grew up feeling like I had to do everything male. Even though I was dealing with this incredibly strong internal feeling that I was in the wrong body. I struggled with so much emotion. I can't even tell you how much I cried over the years. Like I said, every night, just crying and begging and pleading with God to please take this away from me, or please let me wake up in the right body. And so to go from experiencing that for my entire life, and then transitioning and experiencing what it was like to live life in this world as a woman, and then to realize through that process that it was all a delusion and confusion and childhood trauma that caused me to be that way, that caused me to think that that was what needed to happen. And I can't say that it wasn't what needed to happen. This is the crazy realization that I've had about this, having gone through it myself, is that the trans belief is so strong that there is no convincing someone that it's a belief. It doesn't seem to be possible. There are certain trans people that their particular experiences put them in a perspective and belief system within themselves that there's no convincing them. And because it's such a strong belief, I wouldn't want to spend much time trying to convince a trans person they're not really the opposite sex. It's such a strong belief, and because it's tied into a person's identity, I don't want to attack people's identity. I realize that I sometimes say things that are kind of opinionated, and I've done a lot of work on myself to where I've done a lot of work to recognize when my ego is active and when I'm speaking from a part. Speaking from a part meaning that I'm not speaking from the heart. I'm being opinionated and I'm talking kind of like this, kind of strongly worded. That's coming from a part, from ego. Most of this video was recorded from my ego, from a part. When I'm like this, saying this is how it is, you got to realize that that's ego that is speaking. That is a part from my past, because I'm trying to convey a message, because a part of me is triggered, and I'm feeling feelings in my chest right now because of some of the comments and things, and it's triggered me and it's caused me to want to speak. And this is what most people deal with. Most people experience this when they sit down to YouTube and they watch a video and then they type out a comment. They're doing it from their ego. They don't take the time to take a deep breath, get in heart, get in self, and comment from that place. And I'm trying to get better about making these videos from my heart, to get myself in a place where when I talk to the camera, I'm not speaking with a lot of ego and opinionated force, because I want my message to be heard and received by as wide of an audience as possible. And so I try to convey my feelings in a way that they'll be received. And I realize that, like I said, sometimes I find myself getting a little triggered and opinionated. I'm not unique in that way. I'm not exceptional. Most people do that. Most people are operating from their egos at all times because your ego was formed over the course of your life and every experience you ever had. It's a protective system. Your ego is literally there to protect you, to protect your system from attack, to make you feel safe. The problem is the ego has the perspective of the ego, and its perspective is not necessarily clear and all-encompassing. It sees only what it sees. The ego sees its perspective and its perspective only, and cannot put itself in other people's shoes, and therefore when it makes comments, when your ego makes comments on videos, or when your ego records a video, it says things that are going to trigger people. When you make a video from the heart, you're far less likely to trigger people. If anybody gets triggered from you speaking from your heart, that's their problem. If someone gets triggered from speaking from your ego, that's your problem. So if my videos are triggering people from the things I'm saying, I apologize. That's my fault for speaking from my ego. It's hard not to, because like I said, our ego developed for a reason. My book, in fact, talks quite a bit about my ego and my realization of where my ego came from and how it was formed and why it's controlling my life, why it controls other people's lives. So anyway, I just wanted to make this video to talk more about my actual gender dysphoria, because I guess apparently I've not conveyed that information properly, even though I wrote a big fat 472-page book about it. People like to quickly watch a YouTube video and draw conclusions based on the things I say and assume that that's the full picture. I get it. It's easy to do. But just try to stay curious. Try to stay curious to the fact that I am a fellow human being, and if I'm saying that I struggled with gender dysphoria for my whole life and that I was really trans and that now I'm not anymore because I simply gathered enough pieces of the puzzle to where I saw the big picture and saw what gender identity is, to such an extent that it was able to dissolve in me, that's huge. To go from feeling like you are in the wrong body one day to suddenly waking up the next day just about and realizing, oh fuck, I'm actually a man, and that's okay. I can love myself like this. It's okay. There's no problem with this. And life becomes suddenly easier. All of a sudden I'm not scared to travel to other countries where I'm afraid I'll get murdered just for being a man in a dress. In my own country, my own town, it's so much more comfortable. Why would I want to put myself through that? Why would I want to go out? I've been asked, well, wouldn't it be easier just to continue living as a woman now that you've had the surgery and things? No, because I would still be dealing with the shit I dealt with going out in public, presenting myself the way I was. There's a lot of hatred out there. There's a lot of people that don't accept any other expression than the binary. And I accept other expressions because I know that belief is very strong. I love you all. Thank you for watching. I hope this video touches the hearts of many. I hope I can better convey my actual gender dysphoria that I lived with. It was very painful, and thank God I don't deal with it anymore. And it's a beautiful thing. I love y'all. Thanks.